And now, here's the star of our show.
And here to start off tonight's festivities.
And now here's the star of our show, Tom Kennedy.
Alan Ludden. Ken Jennings.
Gene Raymer. Bob Barker.
Dick Clark. Smokey.
Alex Trebek. Elizabeth Banks.
That's Sajak and Vanna White.
Give it up for Steve Harvey!
How you doing? What you say? Let's make this one. Thank you.
For the last 70 years, hundreds of millions of people have heard those famous words coming from their TV sets week after week, as game shows have been a part of television for basically as long as television has been around. They're one of the oldest forms of entertainment, getting their start in radio before eventually transitioning to the small screen, and it doesn't take a genius to figure out why they're so popular. The format of some of the earliest shows in the genre were extremely loose and simple, whether it was naming the title of a song, answering trivia questions, or trying to solve word puzzles. Formats that have all been rebranded many times over in subsequent decades. These shows are often extremely simple to understand. They don't require a lot of arcs that you have to follow from episode to episode to get a complete storyline. There's not a billion subplots with a million different characters you have to keep notes on. And you're certainly not going to find any 5-hour-long, ultra-detailed analysis videos of them here on YouTube. They serve to fill a very simple niche. A comforting, easy-to-understand game where real people win real prizes. The type of show that you can pop in to watch for 30 minutes while eating lunch or waiting for an appointment. That serves to kill some time and hopefully puts a smile on your face while doing so. I personally love game shows. They are easily one of my favorite genres of TV. In fact, some of my earliest memories of watching TV when I was growing up in the 2000s were for shows like Deal or No Deal and Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. Super streamlined, no fuss, no muss games where ordinary folks like you and me won massive cash prizes. These shows have been around forever, often picking up steam when the world was reeling through unprecedented events that shook the public to their core. Watergate in the 70s, for example, opened the floodgates for series like Pyramid and Match Game to dominate daytime. 9/11 in the 2000s meant all sorts of simplistic, down-to-earth TV, such as game shows, saw huge boosts in the ratings. And as recently as the COVID pandemic, there were loads of game shows being produced, not only because they were much simpler to make under such strict guidelines, but it worked in quenching people's fears about the outside world. This format has been a staple of TV and its culture forever, and I can almost guarantee that nearly anyone watching this video has memories of watching one of these shows with a close friend or family member. It's one of those styles that seems to thread pretty much everyone together. Unlike a more specific genre-type TV that often aims at one exact demographic, game shows are universally understood, so their reach can far exceed your average sci-fi drama or animated sitcom. But what happens when you oversimplify a game show? Make the challenge non-existent. Try to appease to everybody by making the game as elementary as possible, boiling it down to its lowest common denominator. Well, like the old saying goes, you can't please everyone. And through experience, I can tell you that trying to please everyone ultimately results in pleasing nobody. And in the good year of our Lord 2024, we no longer have to wonder a hypothetical like this, because there is in fact a show that contains all of these elements, resulting in one of the most bafflingly sloppy executions in any game show I've ever watched. Despite having some neat ideas, this show embodies all of these aforementioned problems, from its presentation to its gameplay, the difficulty of its challenge, the imbalance of its contestants, and arguably its most frustrating element, its repetition. Making for an extremely dull viewing experience, this series marks a new low for how poorly designed a game show can truly be, defeating the point of what makes them so entertaining to begin with. In fact, you can say that this show lowers the bar so much It's on the floor.
I am your host, Rob Lowe. Welcome to the floor.
Oh, Rob. Just when I thought your career couldn't get any lower.
Homicide is why you mask your face. You're shamed and traumatized and haunted by the vast disgrace of watching like a passive waste as mama died and daddy was dispatched with haste. Holmes, you've cracked the case. You're a batshit crazy basket case. Bloody good rhymes. I've got tons. Dissing these dynamic douchebags was elementary, my dear Watson.
So for those of you who know me or my channel at this point, I usually don't make this type of video. Normally, I would talk about shows like this in my year-end list, ranking every new release from the year from worst to best. And while I'm still going to make that video, I wanted to give some special attention to the floor in particular, because I realized I had way too much to say on this one, and, well, unlike the producers of this piece of crap, I didn't want my TV ranking to feel super imbalanced. For those of you who aren't familiar with the series, The Floor is a show that premiered back in January of this year on Fox that centers around players competing in rapid-fire duels against their competitors in order to be the last one standing on the floor, in a chance to win $250,000. It's based on a series that started back last year in the Netherlands that has since expanded to a bunch of other countries, like a lot of game shows end up doing. But for the purpose of this video, I'm only going to be discussing the American version hosted by actor Rob Lowe. Here's how the main game works from episode to episode. At the very beginning of the show, we start off with 81 contestants. Yeah, you heard that right. 81 goddamn people are playing this game together, which should already be ringing off so many red flags in your mind, but we'll go more in depth on why that's an issue a little bit later. Each of the 81 players are assigned a spot on a giant 9x9 grid of squares that they call the floor. In addition, each of the 81 contestants also come in with a specific topic they are said to be an expert in that serves as the category for each of the head-to-head duels they play throughout the show. The categories they have, to be fair, are pretty varied, ranging in topic from things like animals, food, pop culture, history, science, and many more. Some are more specific than others, but none are super difficult. And again, we'll go more into detail on why this is a problem a little later on. As the game starts, a randomizer picks one of the players to lead off, and once selected, they get to challenge one of their neighboring contestants to play a match in their neighbor's category. Once they've made their choice, both players head up to the main stage to begin the duel, and after some fawning over Rob Lowe, they begin the match, which most of the time means identifying the object, person, or logo on screen with an associated image, which you may already be able to tell is very simple and very easy. Now, instead of using a system that relies on points or having to answer a certain number of prompts correctly to advance, the game is set up using timers. When a player gets a prompt right, their timer stops and their opponent's timer starts counting down. Both are given 45 seconds, and there's no penalties for saying a wrong answer, but it's only when you pass on an image you're stuck on do you lose time off your clock. And this is repeated until someone's timer reaches 0, where that person is eliminated. Once one of the contestants wins the duel, they are then given the previously owned space from their opponent on the board. In the beginning, that just means one space at a time, but as the show continues, those spaces that the players gradually obtain throughout the series get larger and larger. They also inherit their opponent's expert category if they were the one being challenged, which is yet another iffy element to the show that I'll go more in detail on a bit later. The winning player is then allowed to choose whether they want to continue playing against people, choosing from the bordering contestants of their ever-growing spot on the board, or if they want to retreat back to the board, well, they'll be safe from elimination so long as they aren't challenged from any of the other players. And this process is repeated, slowly but surely weeding out the field until there's only one person left standing that'll then take home the grand prize of $250,000. So clearly, even from that brief overview of the game, you can probably tell that there are some aspects to the show's format that I think are somewhat questionable. The most obvious one, of course, being how easy the prompts can be. Now, I know that judging the difficulty of a certain task is, like a lot of things, inherently subjective. One person could hypothetically be extremely knowledgeable in a certain field and could be very naive about another, whereas someone totally different could be the reverse of those two subjects. But there are a couple problems with that theory as it applies to the floor, much of it in the execution. Because while the idea of putting people against each other in various topics to see who's the most well-rounded might sound like a good idea for a show, in practice, it falls flat because the so-called challenge isn't really much of a challenge. First off, there is a lot of dough in this pie. In order to win $250,000, the difficulty should not be that low. It should put you to the test with hard questions that put you outside of your comfort zone. It shouldn't be easy. You should be well-rounded across a multitude of subjects and be knowledgeable to answer more specific questions if you're looking to win that kind of money. It's why on nearly every other trivia show, they often put more challenging questions for the final stages of the game, where the contestants are closest to winning the grand prize. Even on seemingly easy shows like Family Feud, they will often give a run of fast money questions that have less wiggle room to hit 200 points with the more times a family keeps winning. It's an inherent part of the genre, and it makes these shows more fun to watch because you know the closer and closer you get, the more stress and tension and challenge there is. The suspense is much higher the closer and closer we get to the finish line, and seeing someone overcome all the hurdles to then win life-changing money, that's what makes these shows so appealing, because it feels earned. Whereas on this show, the randomizer completely eliminates any of that excitement because the prompts don't feel like they have any natural progression from each other. The show is built way too much on luck, which makes the experience feel a lot less organic compared to similarly themed shows. Picking the categories to challenge people on, again, sounds better on paper than it is in execution, because when they actually go head-to-head in the matchup, because the show is trying to make sure everyone can play every category due to the random nature of picking contestants, they are forced to water down every round to simple picture association games as to make sure that everyone has a fair shot at winning. And after a while, the show just becomes a slog because every duel feels the exact same. It's monotonous and boring and tedious. There's no layering to the prompts. There's no interpretation to it. They keep calling it trivia because they want you to feel smart that you can answer these questions just as well as the contestants. But when you stop to think about it, the prompts being so easy defeats any of that satisfaction, knowing that even a goddamn minion could play this game.
Banana.
Yeah, you saw that right. They seriously used fruits as one of the categories. These are grown-ass adults competing for $250,000, and they're scared to challenge each other on having to name fruits. I seriously can't make this up. I think they straight up looked at Outburst Junior cards to figure out what topics to use. It's elementary school level shit. Hell, Are You Smarter Than a Fifth Grader had a higher difficulty, and that show had literal elementary schoolers on it. It's just really embarrassing after a while seeing these people put so much pressure on each other over basic ass topics like items in a bathroom.
It's a pretty easy choice for me to pick Cher. I think I know my way around the bathroom. Who doesn't know bathroom supplies?
Yeah, no fucking shit. I can't imagine how much fiber you'd have to eat to spend so much time in a bathroom you're an expert on the items within it. Like, what are you doing? Knocking out an entire box of Colon Blow every morning? Jeez, dude. But that, to me, is another problem with this show, is the categories themselves are way too general to the point where you can't really be an expert on it. You can't really have a higher degree of knowledge on someone when it comes to something so basic and fundamental. You could probably pick someone off the fucking street corner and they'd probably do just as well. I mean, this is like TikTok level street interview type questions, you know? Going back to the comparison of a much better show in the genre, take for instance Jeopardy, one of, if not the premier quiz show of all time. Jeopardy famously has a wide range of topics that the players get to choose from as well, but the players themselves are, you know, pretty fucking smart people. People who have studied their way to the top, people who know the difference between small details of a very wide subject, and who can apply that knowledge in ways that are entertaining for the audience to ponder at. You can, of course, play along with Jeopardy as well. They often have more general categories or pop culture themed topics as well, but in general, they're able to indulge a little bit because the people they pick to be on the show have a much better understanding of specific knowledge and don't limit themselves to these surface level categories. And it's much easier to do that when you're only picking 3 people to be on each episode than, 80 fucking one of them! The fact that the floor plays with so many contestants means that they don't have the luxury to go in depth on any of the topics because they have to make it accessible for every contestant. And that makes it more and more difficult to do the more people you have playing. They have to make sure that regardless of wherever the randomizer lands, that they have a fair shot at winning that duel. Meaning that they have to dumb down every single prompt and every single duel 81 times over throughout the season just to make sure that everybody has a fair chance at playing. It's as fundamental and rudimentary as they come. They can't risk someone looking dumb on national TV. Oh, God forbid someone looks stupid on this show. Oh no, we're gonna get sued if they fucking air something and it makes them look dumb. And yet somehow people look very, very dumb on this show.
Pass.
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 Pass. Pass. Pass. Raisin.
Like, it's sad enough that we had to use fruits as one of the topics. And it's somehow even sadder that not every answer was correctly given. You know what I mean? The simplicity of this format makes it such a chore to watch because, as I stated before, the duels become incredibly repetitive after a while. On Jeopardy, they mix up the categories. They have different prompts, different presentations. Sometimes they have a guest presenter, or sometimes you need to interpret a category differently in order to make it fit with a certain theme. But here, it's just the same thing over and over again. Now, to be fair, not every single category is like that. There are a few that are designed much better than others. I mean, there's fucking 80 of them. I'd hope there'd be at least a few decent ones. And again, I do like a lot of the ideas here. The simplicity isn't a bad thing to have. The fast-paced, rapid-fire action, it is engaging to watch, especially when they do implement some of those more unique presentation styles into each topic. For example, one of my favorite topics they did in the first season was TV show locations. Of course, being a big TV fan, this one appealed to me, but I actually liked that this one had a bit of thought put into how they were going to present it, and it wasn't just as simple as naming what was on screen. This category, they gave the name of a place where the characters on the show work or hang out or whatever, and the contestants had to name the show in question. So think examples such as Central Perk from Friends or the Seattle Grace Hospital from Grey's Anatomy. This was easily the best executed topic from the entire show because it was able to strike a balance in being simple to understand, rudimentary for sure, but it also required a bit of knowledge for TV, something that I would argue you could call yourself an expert in. You could have a true advantage over your opponents in. Another one I liked was political candidates. Although this one did play out in that picture association format, I thought this one at least was a bit more entertaining because it was a bit more specific than most of the other general celebrity or people topics that they did, narrowing in on just people who have ran for president or vice president, which again works because it's simplistic, but it also helps limit who could be a quote expert with this topic. It works a hell of a lot better than say snacks, games, or items in a junk drawer because again, those are way too general and ordinary to be satisfying challenges for the audience. Now, I'm not saying the categories have to be uber specific. They don't have to be things like shades of lipstick worn by blonde actresses at the 2018 Golden Globes, but it can't be fruits either, you know? We gotta find a middle ground here. Sacrificing the audience's enjoyment for the sake of coddling the contestants into making it as easy as possible for them just feels very weird to me. Like, I get it. You want to make sure that all the players are, enthused and they all feel like they have a decent shot at the money and stuff, but you're also making a TV show. It's meant to be viewed by a general audience, and when the audience feels unsatisfied, what's the point of even making the show to begin with? Game shows are the bread and butter of daytime TV, the comforting retreat from life's hardest times. And in theory, the floor should fit right in with that mantra. You don't need a biochemical engineering degree in order to play. You can literally be chosen at random, and all you need to do to bag 250 grand is to name which fast food logo is on screen. I mean, sign me up. It should be no wonder that this many people want to play the game when it's as simple as that. And maybe there is a possibility that if the series was presented in a way that was similar to the other game shows that take that same approach to their contestants, I could forgive some of its sloppier execution. If the show was trying to imitate the same everyone play along comfort TV format of something like Wheel of Fortune or Family Feud, I might be able to look past some of its faults for how easy the difficulty is. I mean, Wheel of Fortune is not a difficult game by any means, and all of its rounds operate the exact same way as well, with different categories that each puzzle is themed to. It's somewhat repetitive, it's the same idea each round, but somehow I don't get annoyed by it like I do with the floor. In fact, I would even argue that comparing the two wouldn't even really be appropriate. Because while its DNA might be closely tied with daytime TV game shows, the floor is not really a game show in actuality. It certainly has elements of a game show. It can be classified as a game show to an extent. And yes, I called it a game show in the title of this video. Sorry for the clickbait. But in actuality, the floor is really a competition show. And while that might not seem like a big difference, that one little detail makes it go from a flawed but fairly decent idea into a complete and utter disaster.
This is what's great about sports. This is what the greatest thing about sports is. You play to win the game. Hello? You play to win the game.
When you think of the word competition, what's the first thing that comes to mind? For me, at least, it typically revolves around some sort of contest in which competitors train and practice in order to win some sort of prize. The Super Bowl is perhaps the most popular competition on TV, as teams will play off against each other for months and months, training in their efficiency to become the best possible version of themselves in order to snag that trophy. It takes months and months and months of hard work and dedication to pull off. And by the end of it, you can feel very satisfied and accomplished with what you've been able to achieve. If you're a viewer, You often know the frustration, the relief, the disappointment, and the joy that goes into following your favorite teams and players as they get better and better throughout the season. Sometimes one of your favorites gets hurt and they have to exit the game for a while, but when they return, their competitive drive is on full display, resulting in an extremely captivating performance. The passion, the energy, the enthusiasm, it makes for extremely memorable moments of TV that stick with you. Because you get to grow with these people, you resonate with them, maybe even want to see them win for their families or because they want to prove they can overcome an obstacle in their life that won't keep their spirit down. Competitions are innately human experiences that we all share as one. We attach ourselves to communities or fandoms of particular competitors that we share personal struggles with, that we relate to. We can mourn our losses together, as well as celebrate the joys of victory. We need competition. It's what makes the world go round. And not just the TV world, but in business, politics, life. Competition is anywhere and everywhere, and we are much better off for it. Sorry, I didn't mean to get all philosophical on you there. It was just kind of what happens when you are writing and you come up with all these ideas on what to say. But putting aside all that pretension for a minute, reality competition shows like MasterChef or America's Got Talent, American Idol, So You Think You Can Dance, Top Chef, Drag Race, and plenty of other examples, they all follow that basic outline. It might not be as deep or as meaningful as something like The Game of Life, but it certainly is structured in a very similar way. That is to say that the competitors on these shows are real people who have put hundreds, maybe even thousands of hours into a certain skill that they have practiced consistently at. Cooking, singing, dancing, whatever it may be, those skill sets do not come easy. And to be the very best in the world takes serious dedication to pull off. The prize money, the fame, the bragging rights, these things all come when you have something to prove and actual tangible talent in that art form. Competitors on these shows often have lengthy auditions to even be on the show at all. You can't just waltz in and start cooking for Gordon Ramsay. You have to claw your way up there. You have to earn it. And the beauty of them is that even if you don't win, you can still be very successful so long as you're able to retain a fandom through personality or raw, unabashed skill. Take, for instance, Nick DiGiovanni from MasterChef or Morgan Wallen on The Voice, neither of whom placed first in their respective seasons, but are probably the most famous alumni from each of their respective competitions. And it's not just those two. There are dozens and dozens of people who have come from competition shows. Like, just through the research of this video, all of these people were once on a competition show or a game show. And that's not even mentioning arguably the most famous of them all.
Aaron, what do you bid on that?
$1,200!
Hey, before he was one half of the most famous TV duo of all time, before all of the awards and the recognition and the acclaim and the fortune, he was just a normal guy from Idaho. Am I saying inherently that The Price is Right propelled him to that?
Actual retail price, $17.97. Let's get him over here. Right here, Aaron. Congratulations.
You know, I think I am. I wasn't gonna say that because as much as I love Bob Barker, just like the next guy, I mean, it's The Price is Right. But like,
You're the man, Bob! Oh, you're my idol!
It couldn't have hurt either, you know? So yeah, there are tons of examples of people who not necessarily did everything perfect and certainly weren't able to win the grand prize of their respective show, but were definitely able to connect and resonate with viewers cheering them on because of some unabashed talent or raw personality. And it's in this particular avenue where the floor comes up very, very, very fucking short because it misses the entire point of what a competition should be about. We've already established that the show doesn't need you to be an expert in anything, despite what they might have you think, and that the format is so repetitive that it doesn't allow for any of them to individually showcase any true skills because the prompts are far too easy. But beyond what I've already discussed in detail, the biggest problem with this show is that there are just way too many people playing it. A standard game show might have anywhere from 1 to 4 contestants depending on its format and what the nature of the game is. Millionaire, Deal or No Deal, 1 versus 100, and Are You Smarter Than a 5th Grader, for instance, each have just one person playing at a time. Pyramid, Password, and Match Game all involve 2 people, usually with a celebrity partner. Wheel and Jeopardy opt for 3 players a game, and The Price is Right's famous Contestants Row has 4 slots available. The only obvious outlier of the bunch is Family Feud, which technically has 10 because there's usually 5 people on either team, but even then, they usually do a much better job at giving you a sense of their personality and style of play more than the floor ever does. In fact, nearly all of these shows give more opportunity to showcase someone's personality more than the floor, even with their shorter runtimes. Over the course of Deal or No Deal or Millionaire, they keep adding layers to the contestant. They bring their families out, they reveal their intentions with the money. The host keeps the tension high by continuously reminding everyone what's at stake. They're able to take their time telling the story of Mary from North Carolina or Daniel from Pittsburgh or whoever might be playing that night, who, like you and me, can resonate on a human level because they're just ordinary people. And that's just with regular game shows. Competition shows go the extra mile at being season-long arcs where every week we get to see what each person is capable of. We see allies, alliances, betrayals, upsets, and along the way we find underdogs to cheer on and antagonists to root against. There's a sense of emotion that comes with watching these shows and being heartbroken when your favorites go home. Hell, I've stopped watching seasons altogether at times because of that. And yeah, they can be exaggerated. Yeah, they can be corny. And yeah, sometimes, as mentioned before, the best players might not win, but of course they can still have big careers afterwards. These shows are not perfect, but they are certainly popular for a reason. And to me, that's because of, again, how human it is to see someone you enjoy work their way to the top and feel their win be earned after so many hard-fought battles. Of course, in order for any of these shows to be effective at doing that, however, all the contestants need to be able to showcase their talents to the audience and or judges to an equal degree. They all have to participate every week in order to keep a level of ethics and balance, and make sure that no one is unfairly skating through untested. Every week on So You Think You Can Dance, everyone gets a chance to do their routine. Every week on Next Level Chef, everyone gets a chance to cook. Every week on Idol, everybody gets a chance to perform a song. On every one of these programs, every contestant gets an opportunity to participate in the challenger round with the same set of rules and qualifiers. Everybody has to earn their way through to the next stage of competition by giving a solid enough performance. Of course, there are times where certain contestants will be granted an advantage or immunity, but that's almost always awarded through some sort of qualifier, such as not having to do the pressure tests in MasterChef after winning a team challenge. And it's in this detail, the basic fundamentals of competition needing to be fair and equal across every player, where the floor royally fucks up. Because there are so many players all at once, and only so many rounds played during each episode, the majority of players don't get a chance to compete in any of the duels because they're just stuck there either waiting to be picked at random or to be challenged by a fellow competitor. So often what happens in any given episode is that they'll focus on a small number of players that'll play a large amount of the duels in that episode, while the majority of players just have to wait patiently for their turn. They serve absolutely no purpose aside from acting like an extension of the studio audience. And it's made even worse by the fact that the rounds you do win don't really count for anything in the end. It doesn't matter whether or not you have 1 spot on the floor or 80 spots on the floor, it's only the very last round that determines the entire winner. This is a major design flaw that rewards conservative play and punishes aggressive tactics. Even Rob Lowe himself acknowledges this at one point, making an offhand remark that no one wants to play the game. I have never seen a show more incredulous about its own faults than this one. You can actually just camp out in the corner and take it right at the end of the show without participating in as many head-to-heads as the other players. It's fucking ridiculous. Just to give you an idea of the proportion to how bad this problem got, the 2-part grand finale of Season 1 started off with 17 contestants left, 10 of who had not played a single round up to that point, meaning over half the players who entered into the grand finale of the competition had just stood there week after week after week and coasted their way through to the finals without even trying. Could you picture that on any other show? That'd be like if on Hell's Kitchen they sent a random Burger King worker into the finals that had never been on the show at that point. Or if the NBA playoffs just threw a random high school team in there just for fun. It sounds fucking stupid, right? Well, now imagine if over half the fucking teams were just random high schools going head-to-head with Golden State and the Celtics. I mean, I thought it was easy before where all I had to do was say whatever fucking fruit you were showing me on screen, but now I don't even have to do that? I can just win $250,000, the same fucking prize as MasterChef, by the way, all by standing on a fucking square? I mean, I have legs, I guess I'll give it a whirl. Like, just to demonstrate how stupid this is even more, the show, just like every competition, does a little recap promo before the finale starts, and they're showing all the people do the trash talk B-roll and, trying to hype up the audience, And they don't have footage of most of the contestants at this point. So there's no B-roll to show of half the contestants because they haven't played the fucking game yet! And the whole thing is just so fucking silly because it's clear that most of the people just know inherently that this is the case. It's such a baffling oversight to make. Remember when I said you inherit the category of your opponent after you defeat them in a head-to-head? Well, that sounds like, again, a good idea on paper, since it allows for almost every topic to get used up throughout the season. But in reality, what that meant was people purposefully taking on harder categories, going back to the board, and then just camping out, knowing that no one would challenge them because the topic is too difficult, and knowing they wouldn't get picked at random because they only pick people who haven't played the game yet. So there were 2 different women who used this strategy to make it to the top 5, and one of them ended up winning the whole competition despite only playing 3 rounds total because she just camped out in the corner the whole time. And what makes it even more annoying is that the people who won 2 or 3 times the duels as her ended up with nothing. Now, doesn't that seem fair? These contestants weed out all the people for you. They're really good, so they just eliminate them round after round, and all you have to do is stand there waiting your turn to pull the rug out from everyone and walk away $250,000 richer. And I think this goes without saying, but it's basically impossible to get to know any of these people or form any sort of strong emotion to them, good or bad, because they barely last a few episodes. Most of them are just one and done anyway, so what's the point of even trying to make them resonate? You might as well do the Mr. Beast style where they barely even show that round and just move on as quickly as possible to keep the pace moving along. Because this is a competition after all, I have to ask, where's the drama? What keeps me coming back? Does this board mean anything? Do these extra rules mean anything? I mean, what's the point of trying to be aggressive if you can just stand there and watch the actual good competitors just thin out the field for you? Why even bother trying to play the game at that point?
You good taters. What's taters, precious? What's taters, huh?
Potatoes. Boil them, mash them, stick them in a stew.
So remember earlier when I explained that after you win one of the duels, you inherit that person's piece of the board and how that part expands from episode to episode? Well, that actually ends up being a pretty major factor in a lot of the early episodes in the season. Because the catch is that if you are the player to hold the largest amount of the board by the end of that episode, you actually do win some money. This seems like, again, another good idea on paper, but once again is a failure in reality. Because it's sadly another one of those examples where the execution is just not fully thought out properly. The amount you receive is only $20,000, which in my opinion is laughably small compared to the grand prize they have available. Now, let me clarify. I don't mean that it's small in terms of a general idea of it. It's not like $20,000 is chump change. I don't want to sound like entitled or anything. That is a lot of money. But in comparison to the $250,000 they have, it doesn't make sense to go for it. And what bothers me is that this is obvious to the producers and a lot of the other contestants, in that it's honestly just a worse idea to go and be aggressive when the more tactical, conservative playstyle is clearly more lucrative in the end. When you stop to think about it for even a second, you come up with a laundry list of reasons why it's an element of the game that just flat out does not work. For one, the players who own these spots are obviously very good at the game. They hold those spots for a reason. It's like walking into a lion's den. You're gonna come out as mincemeat. The one chick, Stephanie, I swear was piling up bodies in the corner. She just knocked out like 4 players in a row. It was insane. And while she did end up walking away with some amount, it was a fraction of the grand prize, despite her doing 2 or 3 times the work as the actual winner. Even if you won every single game and won every episode up to the very last second, you wouldn't mathematically be able to get to the full prize amount. There were only 10 episodes in the first season, so at most you could win $200,000, which is a cool $50K short of the actual prize, and again, you have to do more work to get it. I know the producers don't think highly of the contestants because they consider identifying a fucking banana as a challenge, but come on guys, it's fucking insulting to purposely trap people into going for something that A, they're most likely gonna lose, and B, isn't really worth it in the end. They have to artificially amp up the drama this way because they can't showcase people's backstories or give them any sort of character development. They have to lure them into going for a big piece of the board, even though it's like walking into a Diddy freak party. It's just an absolute fucking horror show.
Lateral muscle, back muscles, lats, deltoids. Oh geez, pass. Oh no.
But they gotta do it. I mean, they gotta go for the big territory, challenging the big dogs. It makes for good TV, right? No, not really. It's insulting to the audience too. They might think they're doing a good job keeping people engaged, but if you've seen any amount of reality TV, you'll quickly realize how predictable and fake it all is. Oh, what's this? There's time for only one more round, and the randomizer just so happened to land right next to the person who has the most amount of space on the board? How fucking convenient. Sometimes they don't even get a choice because they're island in the middle of someone's spot and it's their only option. Turning to this as the source of your drama as opposed to genuine contestants who can organically become villains or underdogs or fan favorites or whatever the case is over the course of several episodes just feels cheap. It's clear the randomization is only truly random when it's convenient and not actually picking people right next to the action by chance. The producers aren't dumb. They know no one would stick around after that last commercial break if there weren't any stakes to who will win. So they purposely rig it so that the viewers watch for just a little longer. It's just so painfully obvious that it makes the entire show feel empty because the competition feels forced. Now, I know this is the point where people are gonna say, oh, come on, Nick. I mean, every show is manipulated a little bit. And then someone in the comments is gonna be like,
Bro really just figured out reality TV ain't real. Fucking idiot.
And it's like, guys, I know that's how it works. I know it's been a practice that the industry has used for a long time. And to some extent, yes, it's frustrating across multiple shows, but at the very least, they just do a better job of hiding it, you know? One of the most infamous cases of this in TV history was the tale of the 50s quiz shows, which is a rabbit hole that's like so fucking huge, you need a goddamn submarine to explore that shit. We don't even have time to get into that. And one of my favorite shows in this style, American Idol, is riddled with its own set of problems and scandals that, in a lot of ways, lessen the experience after a while. But the difference is that, again, you can still enjoy everyone's work outside of the show when you connect with that contestant, which, as we've established, the floor just refuses to do. Which means that even if American Idol, to some extent, is rigged or manipulated, you can still enjoy Kelly Clarkson's music, even outside of it. But on the floor, the contestants don't get that same treatment. They don't get time to shine like those other shows, and all the drama is focused on the gameplay. The cracks in the armor are so much more visible here than other competition shows. I guess even if it is a widely accepted practice that a bit of rigging is commonplace, the other shows just do a much better job integrating it than the floor does, because after a while, it's just so predictable. I don't need every single minute of these shows to be perfectly authentic and raw as possible. I'm not one of those pretentious assholes that needs for every single minute of these shows to be perfectly organic. I get enough of that in my real life, trust me. And as I stated at the top of this video, these shows are meant to be an escape. I want to see the happy ending. I want to see people win big. I want entertaining stakes. And many of these shows, even if they do fudge certain elements here or there, they seem to understand that element. They seem to have a much better handle of how to execute it for the audience's sake. Whereas with the floor, it seems like they can't even go a single round without someone getting screwed over because of some manipulative bullshit. Like, y'all, do you want to see some of the most uncomfortable moments ever captured on camera? Check this out.
Ice skating. Couples ice skating. Dual ice skating. Pass.
Chips. Ruffles. Pass. Lactose. I don't know how to pronounce it. Lactose. LACOTSE. Pass.
You see what I mean? The frequency of it. It's just the rate that it happens on this show is so much higher than most others. At least to me it seems that way. And it just cheapens the viewing experience. It's embarrassing to see experienced producers and a talented host like Rob Lowe have to just go along with these stupid gimmicks knowing what the outcome will be. The show can't fully pick a side and stick to it. It wants to have the episodic nature of a game show where every episode has a satisfying ending with an individual winner, but in order to do that, it ends up sacrificing potentially good players to these artificially created moments of drama. It wants to have season-long arcs like competitive shows do and enforce competitive play, but it can't commit to giving its audience really good, smart players because it has to dumb down every duel to the most basic, easy possible version of every category. There's not enough time for character growth for viewers to connect with players organically, and the watered-down action makes playing along unsatisfying. It's trying to be both a game show and a competition show, but it can't pick a fucking lane. It's trying so hard to have its cake and eat it too, but it ends up splitting the difference in a truly bafflingly way. It tries to give us moments where contestants get feisty to each other or times where they hype each other up, but it ultimately comes off like filler. And other parts where the duels are filled with dramatic music and lighting, but it falls flat because nothing feels earned. Call this show Jenna Ortega because it's stuck in the middle. And yet, even through all of this, all my gripes, all its faults, all 6,800 words of this script, I still tuned in every episode to see what was going to happen. Because there is a good show in here somewhere. There are good ideas. There are great contestants. Rob Lowe is a very strong host, and I'm sure there are very passionate people behind the scenes trying their best to make it work. And yet it still feels empty and underwhelming and unsatisfying. Some very solid ideas that I was rooting for to work somehow that sadly never did. I came back week after week because there is something to this format that scratches an itch, and it must be doing that for a lot of people. The show is an adaptation, so clearly it was popular enough to get some attention outside of its home country, and after its first season was concluded, it was instantly renewed for a season 2 and 3. So clearly something is working here. Even with its missteps, there is still very good ideas buried inside. And it seems that pretty much everyone who's watched it, both general audiences and critics, agree on that sentiment. So, seeing that this video has been fairly harsh on the series, and I don't like to leave my videos like that, I always try to put a positive spin and an optimistic outlook on things, I want to end off with some pitches that I think will help improve the show for both audiences and its own contestants. Grab your hammers and tape measures, folks, because it's time to fix the floor.
Family's still the most important
Screw
thing
it.
that
I'm gonna fix the bastard. I mean, seriously, how hard can it be? I just need to lift.
Oh, now I see it.
So throughout this video, the one major issue that constantly kept popping up was the number of contestants. It's clear that the show has too many people playing at once. 81 contestants is a lot of people to focus on, and it's clear that that's the biggest issue that the series is facing. So what I would do is divide the board into 9 smaller sections with 9 players apiece. It's clear that the spectacle of the board and having everyone present at once is part of what makes the show enticing and what the producers think is good TV. So having that part is fine, but by dividing up the board into smaller portions, each episode can focus in on one part of the board at a time, making the show a bit more digestible for the audience. At the start of every episode, one of the 9 sections is chosen at random, and once selected, 2 of the players from that section are chosen at random to lead off the first duel. The element of chance is still very present, but by keeping it at the beginning of the episode, it's not relied on to create any artificial suspense, and it feels like its implementation would be a lot more natural this way. Once the 2 players are chosen, they go up to the platform and they play the duel. But what category are they playing? Well, instead of assigning each player a category, I'd assign each section of the board its own category. Something very general like music or science. And then once up at the podium, Rob Lowe could then introduce a subcategory to be played for that round that was chosen backstage by the producers. So for example, if the general topic of the section was music, the first duel could have something a little bit more specific to it, like country singers. And then the second one could be album art, and the third one could be music genres, and so on and so forth. This would eliminate any filler associated with having to explain for the 10th time what categories their neighboring players occupy and who to challenge, and it would just streamline the entire process of the game so that it could move along a bit faster. It would also allow for the contestants to be vetted to fit that specific category based on their own interests or job. And because of that, you could up the difficulty of the prompts because everyone in that section is fitted to play under that topic, meaning you could challenge them without having to water the game down. After the first 2 players are done with their match, the loser would then go home, and the winner would just keep playing King of the Hill style, going head-to-head with the remaining contestants from their section at random until either they lose and someone else takes over their spot as the leader, or they just completely run the table and clear everyone from their section. This playstyle would help drastically eliminate a lot of the filler of the show and streamline the entire process, again, for the audience. It would just focus in on one person at a time, so their organic character development could really blossom into seeing someone become an antagonist if they dominate, And for all the players waiting in the wings, they could be labeled as underdogs, strategizing, helping kind of figure out their pathway to victory, taking on these more dominant players. It would also just help eliminate a lot of the fad of going back and forth from the podium back to the board and helping eliminate all the choices being made. It would just streamline the process a bit. We could just rapid fire these games out because the matches are really what people want to see anyway. Which would, of course, be more fun to watch rather than what they attempted on the real show, which came off forced in my opinion. It would reward more aggressive tactics instead of the real show, which rewards more conservative play, which again is boring to watch in my eyes. And this would also be a good spot to implement the extra cash element for players who are very good at the game, in a way that doesn't cheapen or trap players in an inorganic way like the real show. So for example, if they won 3 matches in a row, they would get the extra $20,000, and if they won the entire section, if they just ran the table and dominated the entire episode, they would win an additional $50,000. That again seems like a better implementation of this element because it would reward people who are actually good at the game and it would force them to actually play more aggressively, which again is more interesting to watch. Even if hypothetically someone came in at the very end and snatched it from under them, they would at least walk away with something and it wouldn't feel as unfair or imbalanced as the real show does. Now the actual matches themselves I would keep the same. The way that they work with the timers and the passes costing you time instead of incorrect answers, all of that works perfectly fine. That part I'd keep intact. Obviously, the prompts should be a bit more challenging, but that's solved because we're picking people who are actual experts in the field, so that's not really an issue. At the end of the episode, the last person standing wins that section of the board and retains the category they played with throughout the episode. They retreat back to the board and is now fully in control of that section. Then the next episode, a different section is chosen with new players. They go through this process again with a new general category, and the winner of that episode controls that section of the board. Then the next episode, it's another section with new players and so on and so forth. Formatting episodes in this fashion would be a lot more satisfying to watch as a game show. You wouldn't necessarily need to watch the entire season to get the full picture because each episode is self-contained with its own section and own unique category. But by setting up this tournament format, it would entice people to come back and watch as all the players win and climb the ladder, enticing people to stick around till the very end. Mostly because they've seen all the players and their different tactics, and they could learn and grow with the characters as they advance throughout the game. It'd be set up very similar to Chopped with its tournament structure, where there are 4 qualifying rounds before its finale where all the winners come back from the previous episodes to compete for the grand prize. And it would work the same way here, meaning that the camping mechanic from the first season would essentially be gone because you'd actually have to work your way into the finale by winning at least one episode. Then in the finale, once all the section winners were chosen, this last episode could then function like the actual show, where everyone has a specific category, those being the ones from the previous episodes they played in, and all the players having to challenge them in those subjects. This part being limited to just one episode would, again, reduce the filler, but it would also be a good chance to see the players finally interact with each other, expanding on their character development throughout the season. As they've all watched each other play, they know their strengths and weaknesses, it would make the trash talk seem more genuine, and it would feel like a real competition where eagle-eyed viewers rooting for or against certain contestants would get to see some real tension and drama come to fruition. It would make the entire thing feel way more alive and energetic compared to the dull and drab reality of the real show, which didn't feel complete because that interaction was so limited. You'd still get the spectacle of seeing the board expand with those neat animations and the individual choices of the players getting to pick for themselves who they go head-to-head with would feel a lot more impactful when it's kept till the end of the show, where we actually know people's personality and playstyle. Again, in general, this would just feel a lot more interesting to watch from the audience's perspective, but I have a feeling that the contestants themselves would like it a lot more too. There are often elements on other shows where halfway through or by the end of the season they converge teams or they start taking on more head-to-head challenges instead of just doing it all individually, and this would imitate that to a better extent. I would personally love to see this version of the show come to fruition, because I think in general there is a really good show buried in here. And seeing all these changes be made and just making the show better for everybody, that's something I would really love to see. No, I don't think that The Floor is the worst game show of all time. Hell, it's not even the worst game show to air on Fox, hosted by Rob Lowe in the last 5 years.
Fox tomorrow, the battle begins.
Welcome to Mental Samurai.
Yeah, anyone remember this piece of junk? Yeah, I thought so. But because of all of these issues, it is the most frustrating one. But hey, crazier things have happened. I mean, I know it's a hell of a long shot, but if any of the producers or the creators are watching this video, I would love to see some of those changes made for Season 2 and really just liven up the game. Make it a little more competitive, make it a little more enjoyable to watch, just make it better. There is so many good ideas in here. There are just so many elements that I know can work, but we just gotta work as a team here to really fully embrace them and bring them to their full potential. And hey, if you're really gracious, I wouldn't mind a couple checks in the mail too for my brilliant and sophisticated and what's that? Season 2 is already aired, and it's the exact same show. But there's even more contestants, making it even more frustrating than it was before. So basically this video was a complete waste of time then. Okay, one final offer. Make one of the categories celebrity sex tapes and put a live reaction shot of Rob Lowe in the corner the entire time, and we can forget all of this ever happened.
Don't wanna be an American idiot. Don't want a nation under the